All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. My name is Todd Brous. I'm your host for the evening. I'm here with Susan Schultz and Ashley Wilson, and we would like to welcome everyone to HBAP Startups. So let's get started. For those of you who are new to the Startups group, we have a few announcements at the very beginning of each meeting. We'll do some short networking breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together for our main event. First off is our mission. We're here to help foster and fortify an innovation and entrepreneur community coming out of the Harvard Business Analytics program. And our goal is to provide our members with the tools, knowledge, leadership, and confidence necessary to create and grow their businesses from the ground up. Susan.
And there are many ways to get and stay in touch with us. Information is going into the chat. So we have our website, we have the YouTube where everybody has their presentations that gave us permission to post them. We have a newsletter you can sign up for to get early warning on stuff that's coming up. If you're in or have been in HBAP, there's a Slack channel. And always bring a guest. This is a really cool community, and we have a lot of incredibly interesting conversations, not the least of which I suspect will be tonight. And then just a reminder that we do post these publicly on YouTube, so just be thoughtful about what you say. And then we've got a couple of planned things coming up, and then we've got about 6 or 7 more that we're working on finalizing the schedule on. But next week, so this week is kind of a prequel to Todd talking to us again about agentic AI and transformation effects. And then on April 16th, we have our HBAP Nick Petsis talking about how he's really very interestingly combined 2 different parts of his life into one business. So oratory mastery, he's been thinking and working on that for years. And then having been through HBAP, combining that with an analytics edge. So it ought to be really interesting to hear what he has to say. And then our code of conduct. So this is a very, as we said, a very unique and special community, and we welcome all of you to it. And our wish is to really create this inclusive environment where we can have these really interesting conversations with different people from different backgrounds and different styles and different beliefs. And so it's all about collaboration, confidentiality, and trust. And as a reminder, in general, all rights are reserved by the presenter, and we follow the honor codes that we've been brought up with. And then the feedback approach is really just give positive feedback. That's the best way to have your ideas digested by others. And then no personal recordings of our sessions. And then always, if you've got something you want to talk to us about or an idea you want to come to us, to this group to, just reach out to any of us and we are happy to help you figure it out.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. All right, let me open up some social networking breakout rooms. I think I got this all set up. If you didn't get assigned a room, you're staying with me in the lobby. And I'll see you folks in about 5 minutes, 6 minutes. All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope everyone had fun in your breakout rooms. Just as a little announcement, at the end of the evening, there'll be a little pop-up window. It'll be a survey. Please fill out that survey. Give me some feedback on how we did tonight. We are data analytics people, so data makes us very, very happy. Just as another reminder, this recording will be made public on our YouTube channel, so please keep that in mind. And then at the end, we will stop recording and we're going to hang out for overtime and continue this conversation for a while. What else? Now, it is my honor to introduce tonight's host. Wait, Susan, help me out here.
Who is Todd,
That's
our
me.
own Todd, our own unimitable Todd.
Why am I not sharing my screen? I don't know what's happening here, but let me.
We have to unmute ourselves and clap.
Oh yeah, right. Thank you. Please unmute yourselves.
So as is our custom, we all unmute ourselves and clap in appreciation for our speaker, Todd.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, I'm fighting with Zoom right now to share my screen. Bear with me. as this comes up, and we will start. All right, share screen, Superintelligence Strategy. All right. I hope you guys can see this. I'm shuffling some screens around so I can see all of your pretty faces in grid view. All right, I see all these people. What if y'all could become the world's smartest people? You don't have to do anything other than just start playing around and experimenting with artificial intelligence and let your friendly neighborhood superintelligence take care of everything for you. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the paper Superintelligence Strategy by Dan Hendrycks, Eric Schmidt, and Alexandr Wang. Dan Hendrycks, by the way, I wish they could join us tonight. I just don't think we're going to get them. Dan Hendrycks is the director of the Center for AI Safety. Eric Schmidt is the former CEO and chairman of Google, and Alexandr Wang is the founder and CEO of Scale AI. I'm just going to put this into the Zoom chat so folks have this already. Do it. There we go. Oh, and this is the other thing I found. Dan Hendrycks has got a book on AI safety, which bookmark that, read it. I think that's going to be a good read. I have not read it yet, but I think that's going to be on the list. In the age of AI, the only future where we thrive is through our human relationships. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Todd Brous. I'm an entrepreneur, a bum, a consultant, a researcher, and I teach AI and business strategy. So please do connect with me. I'm going to put into the Zoom chat my Linktree and my LinkedIn and my Substack. Please subscribe to that, definitely. Now, I do have a number of biases, and I can and will be controversial during tonight's discussion. And I'm hoping everybody has heard of the HBS case method. I love the case method at HBAP and Harvard Business School. They use the case method, and hopefully y'all have read the paper, because that is kind of part of how this is supposed to work. Be prepared to argue your point of view. We teach and learn from each other, and that is the primary intent of tonight. Discussions are the art of managing uncertainty, and my heart is pounding, so there's a lot of uncertainty. I cold calls, just as a little heads up, please do have your cameras on, because I love seeing your faces. I might cold call on you, but please do raise your Zoom hands, and that usually is an incentive. Meaning you've got something to say, and we're more likely to call on you that way. Yes, the cold calls are traumatic, but it's one of the greatest skills you will ever learn. Listening, fast thinking, quickly articulating, and moving the conversation forward is the goal here. So again, please raise your Zoom hands if you can. Please have your cameras on. Please do make sure that your Zoom names are correct and that I understand who you are. And the topic tonight does have a political component to it, and I will do my best to help navigate this. Yes, it's going to be hard to do it, but we'll see if we can get through that together. My role is to guide everyone through this discussion, and I turn to Francis Fry, who's a Harvard Business School professor, for a North Star on a quality discussion. At HBS, we measure class participation as quality per unit time spoken. Francis Fry is one of my heroes. So quality per unit time spoken, quality per unit time spoken. This is one of my big struggles. This means get to the point. Something I completely struggle with. I just put Zoom links in the Zoom chat. I just put links to her book with her wife, Ann Morris. Highly recommended. And also, in order to facilitate that high quality, Francis's advice is to start with your headline first and then offer reinforcing evidence to back it up. This is a figure from her book Unleashed, so please do check that out. Anyway, so some context for tonight, again, for having read the paper. I always like to quote Karim Lakhani, in the age of AI, the marginal cost of cognition and creativity is dropping to zero, and we're going to be discussing superintelligence tonight. So now, what exactly does marginal cost dropping to zero mean? Well, this is the graph that I'm sure almost all of you have already seen on my presentations. Well, this is the AI curve. The cost is on the y-axis, the cognition and creativity is on the x-axis, and we're looking at this zero cost to understand, this zero cost to create. This is incredibly impactful and something that we all need to ultimately understand and come to terms with. Some chapters from my book that I'm working on, AI effects, augmentation effects, replacement effects, transformation effects, and the acceleration effects are the big four. Next week, we were going to dive deeper into the transformation effects. So I'm calling it artificial general intelligence is here. The bottleneck is absorption and dissemination, and everything is, yes, it's still fuzzy. This jagged frontier that Fabrizio Dell'Acqua's paper talks about. Some things are inside the frontier, some things are outside the frontier, and that represents a significant opportunity. But we all need to understand that that frontier is moving outwards like a blast wave. So the AI bomb has exploded, and we're just now starting to feel that blast wave. So tonight we're going to be talking about superintelligence and the strategy that we need to look at. Superintelligence refers to AI that surpasses human intelligence in nearly all cognitive tasks. This development is a major national security concern because it could drastically shift the balance of power between nations. A state or business, quite frankly, that achieves superintelligence first might gain a decisive military and economic advantage, potentially leading to global instability and even the subjugation of their rivals. And the development process itself carries risks such as accidental loss of control or the creation of dangerous capabilities that could be exploited by rogue actors or terrorists or bad people. And by the way, bad people is relative. So what I'd like to do is shift over to another slide deck and start our conversation. So let me stop sharing, pull up my other deck. Bear with me. This is the burden of being the host. All right. What I want to start off with is a cold call on an assessment of the paper. So Victor Capo, Victor, I'm going to you. I would like you to start us off with an assessment of where we are. What did you think of this paper? Give me some information.
Sure. It's good to see everyone. I'll start with the summary statement that I found it to be a disturbing read. What I mean by that is the subject matter is quite disturbing. Um, I didn't find any solutions that I felt wholly comfortable with. Certainly a lot of points and concerns were raised. On the plus side, excuse me, I thought the way analogies were used to events in history was creative and somewhat effective. But on the flip side of that use of analogies, I found it challenging in my thinking to understand where something like a weapon of mass destruction and its impact differs from super intelligent AI and its impact. And without that distinction, I can't really tell you exactly how disturbed I was. I also found a couple of places that I would love to explore further, maybe not on this call, but ideas like there are some presumptions that it's all adults in the room making these decisions. And we can just look around our current global socio-political situation and understand that it's not always adults in the room.
Okay, not always adults in the room.
Right. And likewise, things like when I saw words like trust and détente and other things, I thought that was, they were used purposely, but I find them naive concepts in this discussion. We know that we can't trust. Um, and I'll give you just one brief example. I don't want to take too much more time.
Too late. Keep going.
All right. But I can recall years ago a news story about the fact that the US maps space debris and monitors space debris for a lot of reasons. And after 10 years or so of monitoring space debris, there was one piece of quote unquote space debris that started maneuvering autonomously, not just floating in space. And it turns out that it was it was an asset of a nation who's not necessarily our friend.
Okay.
So even to wait out 10 years and then make intentions known as an example of one of the things that disturbs me, and that ties back to the, let's say, outsized power and impact of super intelligent AI.
Awesome. So anyone else want to chime in, or else I'm going to start cold calling folks. So please raise your hands. I would love to hear what your general thoughts were about this superintelligence strategy. Susan.
Well, I found, in addition to what Victor was saying, I found myself curious about, so went back and reviewed it, what caused us to get into these mutual agreements of détente around weapons of mass destruction. And so it was, what I read was, first it was that we really understood the catastrophic destruction that could happen with nuclear weapons through Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then also that we got so close to a nuclear war with the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so I am worried that we don't see that level of catastrophic destruction with AI, and nor maybe would we see it until it was far too late to do anything about it. So what's our, what is the, given what Victor said about assumption that adults are in the room, it took us destroying 2 cities in Japan to understand how deadly nuclear weapons were. I'm very worried that what is that going to be for AI in time for us to do something?
Beautiful. Love that. Do we have time to decide? We have time for warnings. I don't know the answer to that one. Yvonne, and then we'll go to Silvana.
Yeah, so as I read the paper, I kept thinking, well, this would have been great to have 5 years ago, right? This is something that, and it's a chicken and the egg thing, but there was a moment in time where there was this big discussion. I don't know if you guys remember, and I think it was when OpenAI had first started, and then there was this big fight, and then we need to stop, and Elon Musk comes out and says, artificial intelligence is a danger to the world and it needs to stop. And humans did what humans do. We're competitive, and it continued. So like this paper would have been great, but I feel like the genie's out of the bottle. Like a lot of what they went through, I'm like, we're there. It's already happening. And then I guess my biggest concern with what the paper was talking about is it presupposed an ability to control. And I think it's for the first time, at least in my lifetime, that, you're not talking about just humans. You're talking, and the paper didn't get into this a lot, but you also have to control the agents. And superintelligence makes the point, humans can't control something that's so much more intelligent than they are, but somehow all of the safety guards required some sort of human control or intervention before our ability to identify that you were nearing that point of control. So I think it's a good try. I think that that there's much bigger issues that were not addressed in the paper. I thought that the parallels to nuclear was also difficult because nuclear weapons, it was contained to very few superpowers who had the access and ability to use it. So you could create systems and controls, and you could delineate how this was going to happen, and you could come up with agreements across nations as to what we're going to do. And you did have this mutual assured destruction because it took time. You had different safety levers. Every human being that has an iPhone could potentially be a nuclear weapon in this scenario. I don't think we've ever faced something like this. I mean, the paper goes into like your data centers are really, and the compute is really the limiting factor.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, in the last few months, there's so many different people talking about compute is not what we thought it was. And every day you get a different opinion. But anyway, I've gone too long.
That's okay. I love it. Thanks, Yvonne. Compute is a, competitive advantage. I was going to write. Awesome. Silvana, then we'll go to Andy. Oh, wait,
Hi.
hey, Silvana, before you start, I just want to point this out. I've got a slide right here, Yvonne. There's not a good track record of less intelligent things controlling things of greater intelligence from Jeffrey Hinton. So that was my next slide. But Yvonne, sorry, Silvana, go for it.
Yeah. When I was reading the paper, it was like, I got depressed. Like, it was too many words, war, terrorism, nuclear, whatever. For me, it was like, oh, okay. But in terms of the title about super intelligence, I don't know if the AI will be super intelligent, because behind AI, there are humans. So what they are doing is that they are doing the same thing faster. So I don't know if I will measure the AI in terms of intelligence. That is my first point. And the second point, when I was reading the paper, was like, because the government has to do that, the government has to do this or that or whatever. And this is a general discussion that I always have, why we are waiting for the government to do something, what we are doing as an individual to avoid this kind of risk in terms of, are we talking about values? Are we talking about ethics? Are we talking about or giving to the new generation the good values that some of our family provide us, that this is right and this is wrong, this is not okay, or this is not? Because any government will solve the issue. And we cannot wait for someone else to do something if we have the tools to start now. So this is, for me, I mean, this risk is considering how the society is behaving now. But we as individuals, we can change it.
I love
So
it.
more than thinking about the government is what we will do.
Beautiful.
That is, there were my reflections.
That's a great place to start. Andy, we'll go to LG, and Annie, you'll get the last on this pasture, and we'll move on from there. So Andy, then LG.
Reflections, I guess. With reading it, I have to admit it was a very quick read because I'm not sure if I was going to be able to make the session, but I'm glad I did.
Thank you, Andy.
You're welcome, Todd. You know I'm there for you, brother. So one thing that and a couple different framings from what other people have said with the physical weapons, where mass destruction is a big mindset. There are certain things that can be monitored, tracked, and quantified, such as the yield amount that an amount of plutonium or uranium can generate in terms of destructive power. That has completely no direct correlation to how compute and chip power, because with the advent of AI, if you want to target it, you can have an impact that is so much more wide compared to how many chips you're using. So I don't think necessarily with this article or this document or this write up, it's a fair comparison. With digital, it's not the right way of approaching it. I mean, hacking and cybercrimes have been around for quite some time, even
Right.
before AI. And I believe that a lot of what AI is going to do is it's going to amplify it to some degree. It's going to allow auto targeting and scenario building, but we've already had this capability to do nation state attacks on each other.
Mhm.
So it really isn't going to significantly change the game. But where it really comes into is that, and I think Yvonne was saying it, that you're going to have certain actors be able to launch attacks that didn't have the capability before. And that, again, is less measurable in terms of the capabilities, because like Iran, the US can monitor their nuclear development program and can slow them down. But what if Hamas or some group in Tibet or some place in Thailand a group of people start developing AI, but on such a small scale, but use it in a targeted way, they can be just as impactful. And that technology has existed already. So my initial read is maybe bringing it to the mass, understanding for people. Obviously, AI is very hyped right now, and trying to. So I'm kind of still feeling this out of how much of this is hype and how much of this is actual reality. So I'm going to stay on the fence that we're not having a aha moment in terms of things that we've never done before. So I'll be a Todd to some degree. Like, hey, we're not at all doom and gloom.
We're not all doom and gloom.
Maybe
All right.
Todd is at all doom and gloom.
No, I'm not. I'm trying to balance this equation here. Thank you, Andy. Okay, LG and Annie. Let's. What you got, Annie? LG. Sorry, where'd you go?
Thanks, Todd.
Oh, there you are.
So yeah, my feedback on this that I took away was the fact that there is risk and there is opportunity. So when you look across this super intel, it can be utilized for good and bad. Now, the thing that I thought was interesting is that relative to these, let's say, potentially bad actions, there was that table that identified, okay, this could be considered an aggressive action, and then they thought about what would be the countermeasure or the counter to that. So I thought that was good in the sense that they thought about it. So for each kind of negative, there would be some method to counteract. Now, the other piece that I thought was interesting too was this whole idea of monitoring the AI chips, or at least the technology. So the way I thought about that was a way to level set or having insight into either organizations or nation states of accumulating within the supply chain. So that would be provide some insight. Either there's some technology that's being developed, whether good or bad. So that would provide insight. And then also the whole idea of the development. So the piece that I took away is that in order to be fair and balanced in terms of the superintelligence, is having insight to who's applying it to what. And that was the mechanism of gaining insight to level that playing field.
Okay, beautiful. I like that. Annie, let's wrap up our initial assessment of the paper. Thanks, LG.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that paper. I quick read, just very out of quick reading, I realized a couple of things, right? Number one, when you think about superintelligence, it has potential to reshape the global power dynamics, much like nuclear weapons did in 20th century. So we got to be careful. So when you think about it as powerful as this, right, we got to have very coherent strategy, because otherwise, many of the speakers have already touched on, we could have loss of state control over AI systems. You could have increased cyber attacks, disinformation, and autonomous, like these type of warfares, right? And also the AI system be easily exploited by bad actors. So very similar to nuclear arms control, we really think of international society really should think about how do we put structure framework to make it either regulated or export controls on AI technology, and then make sure we have monitoring and intervention against illegal AI development, because it really makes a huge difference when you think about in terms of the competitiveness of a country, right? I just reflect on in Chinese New Year, in the Chinese like CCTV big stage, they put in together like 50 robots doing dance. It's not just about a robotics doing dance, but it's showcase the robotic technology and able to control very fine movement.
Yep.
If that can apply to military, it's going to be a very destabilizing force, right? So that's a part I think that every country need to pay attention to, and how do we control illegal or what do you call it, unethical AI development, so that we don't get into a weapons competition.
I love that. Robots plus superintelligence give them the ability to actually take effect in the world. Very, very critical. Okay, cool. Thank you for that assessment. All right. So what I want to do now, again, that quote from Jeffrey Hinton, there's not a good track record of less intelligent things controlling things of greater intelligence. So we have to be aware of that. All right. In the peer learning questions, I asked folks to tell me what your vision was for the future. Are you team Star Trek? Are you team iRobot? Are you team The Matrix, or are you team Skynet? And I would just love to get an assessment of where you folks are. What is your vision of the future, having read this, as Victor said, this doom and gloom paper? What are your thoughts on this? Where do we go from here? Without biasing the conversation, I'm not going to tell you where I am until the end. Actually, I think many of you already know where I am. All right, who's gonna raise a hand? Steve Galley, you came off mute. Go for it.
Yeah, this is kind of a tough one. I'm kind of going between Matrix and Skynet. Oh shucks, I gotta choose one or the other.
Well, I mean, it's HBS related. You know, you're supposed to pick one and stand on it.
I mean, I'm one of those who might be willing to entertain that we might actually be in the Matrix, and that's a whole nother discussion for a future topic. But so yeah, I would say I kind of think the Skynet option is probably where we're headed. That's kind of my guess.
So Skynet meaning the destruction of humanity. That's the Terminator.
I think so. I think the Terminator, machines will take over. Which, I mean, my favorite Terminator movie is the Terminator 2, if any of you have seen it, where they really play with this idea of humanity, what it means to be human. And one of my favorite scenes is where, obviously, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right, who's a cyborg, is interacting with a young boy. And the mother says, you know, he will never disappoint him. He will never leave him. He'll be loyal to him. And so they really touched on these amazing ideas of, I think, the topics that I still see as lacking in AI. Will those come in at some point in time? Can AI be able to articulate kind of the deeper philosophical ideas of value and trust and love and belief? I don't know. I mean, that's kind of, I think, can it simulate that better than humans? I don't know. But that's the whole idea of kind of where the Terminator went. So I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place on these, but I think.
And I suck as a host because I'm supposed to make you pick one and stick to it and justify it. But I don't agree with that either.
But
all right.
I think I have a lot of thoughts on all of them for sure.
That's what this is all about, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Who's next? David Morris. I'm going to cold call on you, David. Can you hear me? Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, you're mute. Your audio is not working, unfortunately. Oh, you're muted. Can you say something, David? Nope, not hearing you. Sorry, we'll have to move on. We'll come back to you. All right, who's next? I need somebody to raise their hands. If not, I'm going to start cold calling people. Amit, I'm calling on you, man. Amit.
Hey.
Where are you? What's your future look like? What's our future look like?
So when I was reading this, the one thing that I thought about was that whatever we collectively, I'll take that liberty and all add all of you guys in there. Whatever we predict, we're probably going to be wrong about it. That's the only certainty that I think about, that I can think about.
I agree with that. That anybody who's making a prediction of the future is wrong. 100%.
Yeah,
But
I mean, the only thing that I know is we are going to be wrong, and I think it really depends on literally the mood of the day, whether I'm going to be a little bit more pessimistic and go with the Skynet kind of a thing,
Why?
or really go with something like Star Trek on the more, I guess, on the more optimistic side in there, right? And so I put in the comment a few minutes ago in there, and that's kind of relevant in here, and I'm going to read out that comment in here. So even for it, there's a whole lot of references to nuclear weapons, and how we have so far at least avoided a nuclear catastrophe after the one in World War II, or after World War II, and it needed us meaning the humans, to kind of have a couple of boo-boos before we figured out that, oh, we need to do that.
So that's an iRobot future. So
yeah, I mean, I've not seen that movie, iRobot, so I'm sorry, I don't know much about it, but I think that's what's going to happen, and that's what's going to determine where we are, where it is, what is the future going to look like, and kind of. Hopefully at some point, I hope that the first boo that happens doesn't destroy humanity, I guess.
Beautiful. Love it.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, David, we can hear you.
Okay, that's great. So I'm gonna go with iRobot 2.
Okay, why?
I believe that it will become deeply embedded in society, AI controlling maybe infrastructure, healthcare, governance, and I believe there will be some kind of order, like in iRobot, like some laws to avoid destruction. So I'm gonna go for it, even though I have thoughts on the 4 of them, but this time I'm gonna be for iRobot.
We're supposed to make it pick one. Beautiful. Love it, David. Thank you. Gian, and then we'll go to Annie.
All right. So the article itself gave us a little bit of hint. I will start from there. But before we are going there, let's review
well, which one? Give me which one are you at? Are you Star Trek, iRobot, Matrix, or Skynet?
Okay, yeah.
I need an answer.
Yeah. There's a graph. Let me just pull out for you. I'm looking for it right now. It's nearby here.
Well, which one are you?
There's the China-US battle. Can you find that one? I forgot which page. All right. There's a 2 graph that can show page figure 4.1 and another figure in the front. In the figure 3.3.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have them.
Yeah.
Right
Okay.
to go,
before
which one are
get
you?
into that. Before we get into that, I think that if we can renew how the U.S. nuclear aggression ended,
okay,
then we can go to U.S. AI aggression with China.
I need you to. It's great. I'm just asking for right now for us to talk about one of these 4 things. Which one is your future? That's what I'm asking for.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Which one?
We can find out when that end of nuclear aggression, then maybe we have a hope in that direction. We can end it up for AI aggression between U.S. and China.
Okay,
right?
so
that's a direction.
Okay, so you're saying that we will fit that the U.S. and China.
We need to figure out the diplomatically or policy or strategy how that ended in the world structure. And then maybe we can find a way to regulate, to control, or to to block, or to anything that maybe eliminate the AI aggression.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah, it's better. We're getting there. We're getting there.
All right. Okay. All right. I let everybody speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Annie.
Call me naive, right? So a little bit of me still thinking inside. I know there's a lot of threats. I know that a lot of things could go wrong. And I know sometimes we could think about things could go wrong. But if nations and industry can establish effective oversight and all behave like adults, right? An alignment mechanism, a balanced future could be more love and trust like Star Trek, right? Where AI enhances human potential rather than threatening it. That could be possible. So I
Beautiful.
think it's all up to us to inform it, to shape it.
It's up to us. I like that a lot. Annie, thank you. John, wrap up this. Give me if anybody else wants to chime in on this one, but let's hear from John. Star Trek, iRobot, Matrix, or Skynet?
I like the way you did this in sequential order. We started off with Star Trek with the idea. We went into iRobot, which we started playing with it. We're in the Matrix now because we have an alternate reality going on, fake news, and now the end result is Skynet. I'm going to go with iRobot because I still think, and it really depends on the leaders of the countries that we're dealing with, where they're going to go with this. I mean, if you go back to World War II, I'm not saying they were perfect leaders, except for, but we had Roosevelt and we had smarter people, and I'm not condemning the current administration, but I worry about it because the insidiousness of a pandemic scares the hell out of me. I don't know what would happen if that was unleashed on us again.
Right.
So I'm going iRobot.
I love it. I love it. Annie, your hand. Oh, so Jamie, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I'm an optimist, so I would go with Star Trek.
Okay. Why?
Because domestic manufacturing of the AI chips could be analogous to civilizations wanting independence and access to the critical technology, and then they take that interstellar would be in context to prevent catastrophic events. I just feel like we're going to go interstellar when things get so bad here on Earth, and the conflict may continue up there. But yeah,
love it. All right, thank you for that. So I want to move on to another. Whoops, why is this not working? Come on, you know how to click, Todd. So the paper was very doom and gloom. Okay, they were talking about a lot of risks, a lot of things that could go wrong, and ways to mitigate those risks. But before we address the mitigation of these risks, what's the gravity of the threat? You know, AI as the new nuclear weapon was the general concept here, and the authors of the paper were repeatedly comparing superintelligence to nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, and they were emphasizing the national security implications of artificial intelligence. So my question is, do you agree with that framing? Is superintelligence genuinely the same thing as nuclear weapons and chemical and biological weapons, that we need to address that? How big is this threat?
It's huge. It's the same.
I don't know who that is. Is that Kirsten? Somebody was off mute. Who wants to chime in on that? Nobody wants to chime in. Kirsten, go for it.
Sorry, I got a little background noise going on here. But the gravity of the threat, the problem is, you know, it's nice to think, oh, let's all work together. But right away, I'm thinking to myself as I read this, okay, these are expensive little units. I chat GPT'd this, you know, how expensive are these GPU units? How do you transport them? How do manufacturers deliver them? Yes, there was a heist of GPUs in 2021, and they have yet to, they don't know exactly where all of them went. They didn't divulge, they did capture some of the bad actors, but they didn't divulge all of them. You know, probably it's a, you know, CIA situation. I don't know, whatever. It seems like where money is to be made, there's going to be bad actors. And anyway, that's my thoughts.
I like that. Money and bad actors. That there's always going to be something around that.
Yep.
I like that a lot. I'm putting that down. Can't type. Annie, and then we'll go to Yvonne.
Yeah, thank you. I do believe the gravity of threat is real. It's almost as bad as a nuclear weapon. That's it.
Okay, it's almost as bad.
Yep, almost as bad.
So this is an existential threat to humanity.
Correct.
All right. Especially if it goes out of control. Awesome. Yvonne, I know you talked about the nuclear stuff earlier, but let's hear you. I want to hear what your thoughts are on this.
I just think you have to do the parallel. You were talking about, for the first time in humanities as we know it, There's a possibility of finding every cure for everything there's unimaginable positive aspects to it, and you have a relative negative side to it. So just as nuclear weapons were bad, this is nuclear weapons plus everything else. Nuclear weapons, biological, everything. I don't think we understand the magnitude of the threat, because we don't understand the intelligence that it can reach. And if we can't control it, you can control nuclear weapons to a certain extent before the nuclear explosion. Can you control the agents? Can you control the superintelligence? I'm not sure. So yes, the magnitude of the threat is there, just like the magnitude of the opportunity. It's like with anything else in life. I think for what's different this time is really a question of, can we understand? How many people in the world really understand what's behind this mechanics? We're talking about human oversight. Can you control it? And it's prolific. Nuclear weapons were not prolific. You could control it. It's within a nation state, or at least there was some sort of accountability. I'm not sure you can get that with this. Okay, now that I depressed everyone, I'll let somebody else say something positive.
No, we're talking about the threat here. We want to really understand, how bad is this? That's the question that we're really discussing. Yvonne is basically saying that everyone can get the superintelligence and it's really, really bad. All right, Victor, then Julianne.
Yes, thank you. I think that the threat and the gravity of the threat has to be considered in terms of the gravity of the vulnerability that this technology exposes to us, whether it's the hardware vulnerability, for example, these super intelligent, super capable data centers that might be few, but powerful. I think that's a vulnerability compared to, say, the internet, where if a server farm goes down, there's redundancy and things get rerouted and internet generally stays up. So those points weren't clear, and I don't want to try to solve that one here, but that's an example of if there's a few data centers doing it all, then there's a high vulnerability, and therefore there's a gravity of threat. The other assessment I would add is when you consider the history of weaponry. It's obvious when somebody launches a rocket toward us and we have detection and purported defense mechanisms to counter that. But an attack at the level of superintelligence in the world of AI is not necessarily going to be as easily detected. And I don't know that it would be thwarted. It would more likely be, let's say, responded to. So when you talk about this inevitable mutual destruction concept, I don't think it works quite the same. You know, you blow up mine and I'll blow up yours is one mutual threat deterrent. But when you think of the gravity of the impact of somebody taking down with an AI everything that it intends to, in a military sense, to create an enormous, again, outsized vulnerability that opens the door for the second layer of a potential attack. That's a huge vulnerability that we can't turn around with the launch of a rocket or an interceptor of jets or what have you. So just a couple of examples of the point about gravity in the context of vulnerability.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you, Victor. Julianne, then Andy.
Yeah, so I get the gravity of the threat. One of the things I would say, this has been thought through and been developed since the 70s. And where we are today, the technology still can't think. It still doesn't have memory. And so, yes, you can postulate, you can say, okay, this can destroy us all. And we can think through these longer term things, but it's not there yet. And that's the thing to keep in mind. Like if you go ask the LLM, can you remember my past logs? Like I actually just did this morning with Claude. It can't do it. You have to go cut and paste. And so
that's because you're using, that's great. Great point. The conversation you are having with any one of these chat interfaces don't usually maintain across context.
They don't, and they don't have the capabilities to do that, and that's why they don't have AGI or super AGI, and that will have to be developed. And so at some point they may get there, but that's the goal. And so the thing about it is when you think, or that could be a goal, that could be an end to the means, but when you think about this as a threat, this can be a threat that can be contained, it can be used for good, but it's one of those things where we have a tendency to think this technology is further along than it really is.
Exactly.
Like, for example, today I was having a conversation with a doctor that's planning on using a hologram. So we're literally talking about Star Trek stuff and that stuff from movies, but it's coming through today, but that's like 30 years of technology in the making. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I like that. And yes, you are correct that the model itself cannot think and have a memory. Those are additional technologies such as retrieval augmented generation or other databases that need to be augmented in an agentic pipeline. So the agentic stuff can do this right now, but not just on the model weights and biases by itself.
Exactly. So you can basically unplug it.
You can, I love it. I'm going to write that down. That's you can unplug this. You can and somebody was putting this in the Zoom chat. Unplug this today, right now. You can unplug it. Absolutely. Thank you, Julianne. Well thought out. Andy, and then Jian.
Yeah, I'm going to help with Julianne and bring things back to a level of optimism because obviously
there's no optimism here. This is about the threat. Yeah. Okay. Give me the optimism.
Yeah. So threat wise, I think with AI amplification that can happen from existing, I agree with what Julianne said. There's a lot of existing capabilities that we've built up, and what we see in the consumer space is behind what military can do, right? And nation states have this capability, but with the augmentation of AI from an offensive standpoint, I really believe in the paper also mentioned this, your defense also increases. So because of that, they will have some level of leapfrogging of each other. And I believe that, and I said in the chat, defending AI attacks are infinitely more easier than missile defense. It just is. There are some natural choke points, there are natural capabilities to shut things off, whether it's a pulling the plug or just basically rerouting commands. So there, again, a little bit of this is because I come from the cybersecurity space. I understand there are limitations to, even if you have infinite resources. Right now, some of those resources are humans behind a keyboard. They're limited to who they can attack, what they can attack. But if you start doing agentic AI and being able to have the system itself determine targets, you're going to have defenses that are also agentic AI that are defending against those. So I believe the threat is elevated, but so is the defense itself. So are we really just back at where we're currently at, right? And I mentioned before that cyber attacks already are happening. One of the challenges we have, which is we already are crossing nation barriers and stealing government secrets from each other. We are already attacking and creating conditions where we're taking down nuclear centrifuges, right? How do we actually start having conversations around that those are not okay? Because right now it's not even a slap on the wrist. If Russia attacks us or we attack Russia, it's kind of a political issue. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to cry wolf. And how do we elevate that? Because where AI starts doing is those attacks can happen more frequently. I don't believe it's going to create something that doesn't already exist, but we need to have those conversations around, hey, if you attack us in cyberspace, it's the same thing as attacking us in real space.
Right.
And that has nothing to do with AI. It's just a fact of us making a political statement or an agreement that if you attack us in this manner, which it's hard, right? One thing, if it was a nation state like Russia, you know who to call. Well, if it is a group that is in the jungle somewhere with a, their small set of AI chips that are attacking, and they could even be routing their traffic through Ukraine, make it look like Ukraine is attacking it. Things get a little bit more tricky, but you have to have the capability to say, this is not okay, and we're going to act.
Yeah.
Right now, we're not acting. So AI or no AI, that's more the challenge. But the gravity of the threat, in my opinion, it's not AI specifically, and I agree with Julianne that the systems themselves are not the weak link. The humans and the policy making and how we treat an actual attack that's the weaker link, and that'll remain the weaker link for a little while.
All right, Gian, you're up. Thanks, Andy. Gian, can you hear me?
Unmute. I try to unmute myself. All right. So from the information of this article, and then very clearly that by 2024, that training computer is all in the AI, almost to the very centralized training AI training computer scaling. That means everybody's doing the same thing. And that means the intelligence of the level is very competitive in any geographic competitiveness. So based on that, obviously we have to, there's a war going on, and then it's clearly that the intelligence you can be using in positive and a negative way, and then can be very harmful, has a terrorism or bioterrorism, whatever, going to be in the society is a cyber attack or all these bad things going to happen. And we all know that a few years ago, I don't know now, I heard that the security, really not much security there at all. You protecting, and then the other side can hacking you anytime they want it. So by the physical disconnecting, which we have a graph here on this article, about 4 point something. So we can blocking in different level of information. On the end, on the monitoring, we can monitoring, detecting nothing. So that's sort of like, you're not detecting anything. You didn't see anything on the monitoring, not mean that you're not AI control anything, right? So that is another scare part of it. So it seems like it's uncontrollable. That could be compared with, former historical nuclear threaten to the world, right? And then so that really, if in the broader perspective of competitiveness right now, it seems like China and the US is standing out. And of course, by 4x4 here or 2x2 here, figure 6.1, that is 4 dimensions that we have to consider: the military, economic, law, and then politics. So political stability is a very key thing that are able to hold in the status of attacking or defense. And the law, strongness of law, able to control, direct people in the right ethical field, right? Economic is a base support for the technology development, and the military, of course, is a attacking weapon that basically is controlled by the government. So
Right.
all these four sections is indicating of the competitiveness of strengths. And then, then we have to think about how did the US and the Soviet end the nuclear war. That was all because the Soviet broken down, and so the war is ended. And now Soviet was with Ukraine. Then that is a small scale, but still I don't know for what reason they're fighting. But here, China and the U.S. The speculating of biotech, terrorism, I think is the one thing. And then maybe there's other competitive of economic war and other wars, or like a different political opinions, and everything is all against each other with the system, right? But I believe the people, the basic living people,
Okay.
are still loving each other. So
okay, I love that. I'm going to stop
on
you
the
there.
end, yeah. Well, on the
That was a
end,
lot.
who wins? I think people wins. Anything towards people, the war
Okay.
will end.
So again, I definitely appreciate that. The people win. That's very optimistic. I like that. So I want to move on past the gravity of the threat to something that was discussed in the paper, which I think is exceedingly important, is this concept of mutual assured AI malfunction. And I would love to know if somebody can really, take us through this and maybe explain it to us. Here's the diagram. I think, John, this was what you were mentioning. They talk about the mutually assured destruction on the left, this U.S. nuclear aggression versus the Soviet nuclear aggression, and this stable state. This is all game theory. Mutually assured destruction occurs where we have, everybody's got nuclear weapons, everybody has access, everybody sees what everybody's doing. We have this scenario where the U.S. would do a first strike. Obviously, that would cause a war, and the Soviet would have a first strike, and obviously that would cause a war, and that's the mutual destruction. So having this stable state is very, very important. MAME, on the other hand, they've proposed a US AI aggression versus a Chinese AI aggression. Mind you, this is really talking about two superpowers. Add some more dynamics to this when you're dealing with terrorists or other countries, North Korea, Russia, and so on. But this mutually assured AI malfunction is another stable state. So this is from my perspective, this is one of the crux components coming out of this paper, which I think is very insightful. But I would love to know if somebody here wants to take a stab at really walking us through this and explaining it. What did you think about this? Can you summarize what MAME is? This is the hard part of today's presentation, because you had to have read it. Do you believe that stable state is a desirable strategic outcome and for managing these superintelligence risks? Victor, thank you.
Well, my thoughts went in two directions. One is the direction of the paper, generally speaking, which is, let's say, military oriented and nation state oriented. The other one is, I went to this thought of MAME in terms of business use case. And I had some trouble separating those two because I don't think MAME exists in the business world, right? I think competition exists in the business world. And the people leveraging the strongest tools may have a competitive advantage per use case, right? So if I put those thoughts aside and go back to let's say, the military aspect.
Yeah.
I don't think MAME works the same way as MAD, because I think MAME has a greater potential to be stealth. You don't know you've been cyber hit until you've been cyber hit. It's not defensible. You can only react to it. So I was uncertain, even though I understand the point the others are making, and once again the parallelism that was kind of prevalent in the paper to historic things. I struggled with, and I hesitate to say this because I haven't studied it as the authors have, but I struggle with the merits of the concept of MAME.
Okay. So no merits for this. Anyone else? Thank you, Victor. Or is that, did you finish, Victor?
No,
Sorry.
no, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Folks, and I also want to hear from other people who we haven't heard from. So please, I'll start cold calling people we haven't heard from. I won't do that. But just raise your hands. Andy, and then Kirsten.
I'll be a little brief. For MAME, I think there's some aspects of it that they want to say is similar to nuclear aspects of control. But one thing that you can say is we have to have some transparency to the capabilities, which I mentioned earlier is near impossible. But if we can have some transparency, then you can actually say, okay, certain nation states can do it, certain can't, certain groups can do it, certain groups can't. What I do like that was mentioned is around robot fail-safe communication channels, which is like hotlines from an aspect if you're getting attacked that you can, your president can call the other president and say, hey, stop it, please. But at this point, I think Victor's right, is there's going to be some level of stealth and an aspect if you feel you're getting away with it, why admit it that is happening from your nation state, right? And that aspect is much different in the physical world. In the physical world, that rocket launched from your land or from your submarine, you can back trace it to a certain nation state. Whereas the concept of MAME having some elements of the same functionality, I don't think is there. And also to agree on certain developmental agreements, if you were to say, okay, hey, I'm only going to develop my AI to a certain level. We're seeing that play out in Ukraine, right? With certain states saying, well, I'm going to promise not to do X, Y, and Z, and then go do it anyways. Now that's in the physical space. In the virtual space, if you say I'm only going to do ABC, and then you feel you can get away with more, and that's kind of where I think MAME it falls apart because there's so much that you can do in the digital space that is more cloak and dagger the way it used to be. But one thing I do agree is if we have some of those transparencies and hotlines, humans should always remain in the loop in this regard.
Beautiful.
Because in the end, if we're going to pull the plug, I don't think we can trust a computer to pull its own plug. Whether it is AGI or whether it is just pure, it was triggered by a human, but a human can't pull the plug. I don't think a computer will pull the plug on it. So a human always has to be the trigger. It always has to be a part of the loop to unplug. So.
And that theory would be like there's a superintelligence that's controlling the military stuff, but then there's another superintelligence that can pull the plug. Is that likely? That's a good question. But can you trust what would be necessary to trust a computer to pull its own plug? I don't think that's possible, right? It just seems like a conflict there. Good stuff. Thanks, Andy. Victor, you got your hand up? Yeah.
Yes, I do. I don't see other hands, so I was going to indulge with another point that's a discussion point for the group. In reading the article and thinking about it, I couldn't come up with one example of a MAME countermeasure that would be effective.
But would you need a countermeasure? Because the whole point is, it's like the nuclear MAD. It's like everybody can see, everybody can do. Why do you need a countermeasure if somebody's going to attack you?
Right. I don't mean, maybe I'm using the wrong word, Todd. Not countermeasure in the terms of an action, but I'll change the word to counter deterrent. Right. A MAME deterrent. I can't come up with one example of an effective MAME deterrent to say that MAME would function like MAD as a mutually assured malfunction. So, for example, you blink the lights on Wall Street to prove a point. what am I going to do? I'm going to go blink the lights in your infrastructure. Is that a deterrent? And maybe my thinking isn't broad enough on this, but I don't know if anyone else in the group had thought of what MAME would actually look like in practice, effective MAME.
That's one of the greatest questions. What would this look like in practice? I read for that. I could not find a good answer to that exact question, Victor. Really good thinking. That's one of the reasons why I'm asking this. Thank you. Kirsten.
Sorry. I just don't see how it's going to work because of everything that's already been said. Like, people don't divulge their secrets. Everybody wants power. The powers that be want to keep their power. I don't know. I suppose, did anybody ask ChatGPT?
Yeah, yes, I did. Confession. I used several.
But did you get an answer on it?
I got several.
Oh, good.
I got several. And if anybody knows the CTEC astronomy reference, put in the Zoom chat. I'm reading what Andy just put here. Some AI attack possibilities for MAME, mass scale, cyber and information operations core idea. An AI dominant state could deploy highly sophisticated cyber tools to identify vulnerabilities in adversaries' networks, neutralize defense systems, and manipulate or disrupt critical infrastructure. Yeah, that's a threat. The autonomous economic warfare, using AI to dominate global supply chains, markets, and industries, the state pressures on adversaries' economies. Yes, yes. Did you write this? No, AI wrote this. You didn't write this, Andy. You GPT'd that, right? Yeah, AI. I was like, this is all formatted beautifully. And the invisible power projection. Okay, this is one of the big questions that I have. This AI dominant state leverages autonomous or semi-autonomous drone swarm. Like, how do you combat against that? And I think that the mutually assured destruction makes sense because we can see it, but when we can't see it, the sabotage that can occur through this framework seems to be that there's a weak point here that I myself can't wrap my head around. Anyway, okay. What else do I have? Oh, I don't know why I have this slide here. I think there was something that I wanted to mention about it. But possible outcomes of a U.S. superintelligence Manhattan project, an example pathway to escalation. The U.S. project outpaces China without being maimed and maintains control of a recursion, but doesn't achieve superintelligence or a super weapon. Though global power shifts little, Beijing condemns Washington's bid for strategic monopoly as a severe escalation. The typical outcome of a superintelligence Manhattan project is extreme escalation, and omnicide, where we all kill each other or the AI kills all of us, is the worst foreseeable outcome. And what I don't know about this is like, so are we allowed to associate probabilities to this? Because if so, then escalation is a 33% chance. Omnicide is a 33% chance. The US getting destroyed is a 16% chance, and China getting destroyed is a 16% chance. Forget about anybody else in the world. So like, where's the utopia here? Where's the good outcome that's just absolutely like, I feel like I'm missing from this paper. How are we doing on time? 9:21. So another slide that I had here was I don't know if Jan, were you referring to this slide 4.2, an example MAME escalation ladder with maiming actions. So a large-scale attack on many data centers threaten non-AI related assets, the escalation to broader hostilities, kinetic attacks, that means physical bombing or nuclear on data centers or corresponding power plants. A kinetic threshold would be achieved or surpassed. Cyber attacks on data centers or corresponding power plants, deleting code. Yeah, good luck with that. Overt sabotage threshold would be hit where model weights are stolen, covert attacks to degrade training runs of destabilizing AI projects, cyber attacks causing GPUs to fail more often. That would be interesting. Covert sabotage threshold would be espionage of AI developer workspace, communications, personal devices, and facilities. So again, interesting MAME concepts here. So good on that. So what did Andy put here? Right now, one of Russia's asks is U.S. to not supply help to Ukraine for a ceasefire, but the invisible power projection could be helping in a manner not seen if we choose to do so, or even if we were to help Russia in an invisible way. Yes, EGADS is right. Beautiful. All right. So another posture, which, and I think we have time to just kind of cover this, and I guess we'll have to just wrap it up after this. For those of you who are aware of this stuff, large language models come in a couple of flavors and different sizes, but we have open weights and open source models, and there's a difference, and I'll kind of define it for folks here. Open source is the code that is used to create the model itself, and it's usually in Python. The open weights is once you've gone through the process of training a large language model, you get a file that exists on a hard drive or on a cloud server somewhere. That model file can be disseminated. We can upload it to Hugging Face. We can let other people download it. That is the open weights model. So I can download the model, I can run it on my infrastructure, on my computer, and we now have access to these things. So the paper discusses the risks associated with releasing advanced AI model weights, particularly those with expert level capabilities, like virology. So that was the viral aspect, I mean, biological capabilities inside of the LLM. So how should policymakers and the AI industry balance these benefits of open access to the AI research with the potential for misuse by rogue actors? And what criteria do you think should guide these decisions about releasing model weights? Do we want everyone to have access to these models the same way, Mark Zuckerberg released Llama and DeepSeek has released V3 and R1? Or do we want to control all of this stuff? Which is better? So Gian, thank you for raising your hand. The dual use conundrum, 100%.
All right. Well, as you're asking the question, I'm looking at the figure 6.4, empowering decision-making with AI insight.
Okay.
I would think the strategy response for all these threats should directly to the coder and the coding engineers or AI engineers in the detail or innovation of any, the method response. For everybody else, maybe just for the coordination of a strategy, administrative supporting and policy surrounding of controlling like fiduciary duties.
So I pulled up figure 6.4. I'm not sure how that relates to the open source, open weights of models. So you're saying that that's a deterrence, or is that or are we just proliferating and giving?
I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. Well, that is the strategy response towards the security threat. That means, that's a partially controlled method that's supposedly available now on the market. That is the direction that we try to think about. But if we go to detail, for me, I obviously unable to chip in anything. There's no idea for me because I'm not coder, I'm not engineering, and only the engineering designer, technology frontier that they know exactly what they do.
Okay, so the providing access and maintaining that is you're saying is a good thing because it means that everyone has access to the technology, everyone can use it for both good and bad, the dual use, and you're hopeful that the bad users, the bad actors, will be less
eliminated, eliminated or controlled.
Well, but again, the problem that we're facing is if we're looking at this from a mad main perspective, it's the US versus China. If that's the case, then the United States should act aggressively, quickly, decisively, and destroy China's entire electrical infrastructure, entire supply chain, and wipe them off of the planet from an infrastructure perspective. That
means you're starting World War III or World War IV.
Again, we're dealing with it's World War III, but it's a superintelligence.
If you want to do that, definitely war.
Well, that's
I have no doubt for that. Yeah.
That's the problem. That's what Maine
That's
is
the
supposed to.
problem. Yeah, that's the problem we are facing. If you want to go mild, then those are the strategy that go.
Yeah.
And then go to diplomatic way.
Okay,
And
yeah.
again, I would review the history of Soviet U.S. nuclear
And I want to
how
focus.
that
I
ended.
want to focus on this specific concept though of the open weights and the open
Yeah,
source
that's why I
model.
just gave
Yeah.
to you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Roland, Victor, then Jamie. Roland, you're up, sir. Hi, Roland.
Hey, what's up?
So,
Okay, so we're
what are your
talking
thoughts?
about the open source. Open source is just open source. Like, why I don't know if I don't think it should be a problem. It should like giving everybody the access. It should be okay. The only issue, because AI, as a programmer myself, AI itself is an algorithm. What it matters is in the end to the people is the information that's stored inside. This kind of content itself, even though the person have the access to the information, that's just having the access to the information. The issue was never lies with the tools itself. Should it be freely accessed? Okay, yes, but the thing is, I personally prefer it's not have the real-time access so much.
I'm not
Have
sure.
it in,
You do not
have it
want
in,
real-time access.
the issue with nowadays the superintelligence is not the issue with the technology itself, is the civic, the people, whether they can come up with the civic between all the users that they can come to a mutual agreement how they use it. Okay, that's the major issue here. And the main ones, I find out it's kind of, yeah, personally, when I was reading the paper, I feel like there is a little bit of trouble with the source because it's basically saying if we cannot do good, then we should be done together, right?
Okay.
I doubt having two super intelligence will causing a problem. As long as the users, humans, set the framework for positive competition. Competition always exists. It's the framework and governing of the competition that matters. If there is no framework and governing of it, it's just gonna be like uncontrolled intelligence. It doesn't matter if it's super intelligence or it's another human. It can go as dumb as it gets. And yeah, so yeah, so the thing essentially it's like the intelligence itself is as long as intelligence, just like any of the harmful thoughts every person have, as long as it stay within the skull, it's just a thought, right?
Love it. All right.
I hope it helps. Like I address the question or I just kind of drive it off.
No, that's okay. I mean, again, the question really is about these open source, open weights models. Is this something we should be doing? Is this something we should not be doing? This is part of the dilemma of MAME and MAD and superintelligence and how businesses and governments should be looking at this. Victor, we've heard a lot from you, but I'm going to skip you, Victor. Hold on. Jamie, let me go to you.
Okay, well, just in brief, I feel like access would also increase defenses.
Okay. So even if you are not China or the United States, say you're another small country, if you have access to these technologies, maybe you yourself could defend yourself.
Correct.
I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you. All right, Victor, then LG.
Sure. I just wanted to bring out an impression that I got from the article that one of the maybe easier paths to destruction through superintelligence is the covert manipulation of weights to make an existing model perform badly to bad intention. And so I wanted to bring that back to the point of vulnerability. This question about do we do open weights and open source or not, to me, once again, it goes to vulnerability. And if we know that weights need to be protected so that the model can't be manipulated for evil or bad or whatever we call it, I don't know the technology, but can we protect weights in a model by
once,
some
once a model is
technology.
Once a model is trained by in any company, they can, make a compression file. They can create a hash key that would be, again, in the superintelligence world, maybe not, but today we know that there's a hash for that model, so we can verify if we download it or transmit it or use it someplace else, if it's the original version of the file. We do this with code. We do this with software all the time.
Right.
So I think that the weights themselves can be protected, but if you're dealing with a malicious actor like China making DeepSeek or Meta making Llama, the companies themselves, the countries themselves, are going to instill their own biases, their own preferences inside of those models. If you were to ask DeepSeek, if you were to download the model of DeepSeek and run it on your DeepSeek R1, and you were going to ask it about Tiananmen Square, it's not going to respond. It does not have that, or it's been trained to not have that in its outputs.
Right.
Several people, researchers, have worked to remove some of that training from DeepSeek, and they've proved that they could. And say now, if you were to look at a clean version of DeepSeek R1, or a cleaned version, I shouldn't say clean, adjusted, fine-tuned, jailbroken version of it, it will respond to those types of things. So
right.
yeah.
What I'm alluding to, though, is the question of, can a bad actor infiltrate a model and adjust the weights, and you wouldn't necessarily detect the outcome until it's, quote, too late.
Got it.
And to that point, once again, the vulnerability question comes to mind.
I like that. The good thinking. I don't know if that's possible, but that's a good question. LG, and then we'll we'll wrap up this. Oh, Grzina just raised her hand, so we'll hear from Grzina. LG, and then we'll wrap up this thing, and because we're at time.
Thanks, Todd. So my opinion on this is I'm all for the open source models. However, on the open weights, I view that as being tailorable and proprietary to the folks who are using the open source models. Does that make sense? Because
No,
you can
say that again.
Okay. So I'm all for the open source models, all right, the source code and all of that.
Yeah.
But I feel the idea of open weights is sort of counterintuitive, because I view the weights as being proprietary. So you tune your model to whatever it is that you want. So let's say that's a nation, or let's say that's a company trying to protect their IP, or whatever the case. I feel that the weight piece is the key, and that should be protected.
Okay.
And that it's tailored to whatever the objective function or
yes
approach is. That's my point. That
So-
should be protected.
The weights. So you're against Meta and DeepSeek releasing their models for you to download and run on your computer. And
Well,
the idea here is the open, the incentive here, just so I can clarify, the idea here is I can now download this model and I could use it in my own protected environment. I can create my own superintelligence, because that's the strategy here. Like, imagine a world where a superintelligence, open source, open weights model is now available that is fundamentally, by definition, smarter than every human on the planet. So now why shouldn't I be able to download that? And does that not equate, level the playing field? Do we not have some sort of a mad MAME equilibrium that's a protected state? That's that's the idea. That's the ultimate question that I'm posing to everybody.
Right. And my point is, okay, so maybe those open weights are released, but you can't tell me that that's their solely their own model. In other words, it's not a single threaded kind of thing. You got to believe that they've got other models and proprietary.
Yes. Okay. Works in progress.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. You've got the public facing one, and you got the private one.
Correct.
That's true to an extent, but it depends on who you're talking to and who you're talking about. there are some organizations who are building foundation models that their sole purpose is to make sure that this stuff is open and available for everyone by charter, meaning the people who are paying the money and investing in this stuff, they are like full on open source, open weights, so that everyone in the world can have access to these technologies, and then of course build upon it. So there are some people who think that the open source is going to be the savior of all this, because then the more people that have it will have this equilibrium.
And I think that's wishful thinking.
It's okay, wishful thinking.
It is, yeah, it is level setting the playing field to some degree, but I have to believe that there are some components and some perspectives that are being withheld.
And again, yes, some of the proprietary, absolutely. I think I agree with that.
Thank you.
But there's a lag. Okay, so and what we're seeing, we've seen this for decades with open source software like Linux. Sure, there's something internally proprietary that does that, but then ultimately open source, because more people are accessing it, open weights, more people are accessing it, that captures the proprietary. But
the whole point about community and open source is to help to build the better.
Yes.
So yeah, what I'm talking about is, okay, yeah, you're building better over here, but there's still this proprietary protected.
The governments are still working on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Beautiful. Okay, Grzina, let's help me wrap this up. Last comment, and I'm gonna shift gears and we'll end this.
Yes. So I think that open weights helps smaller countries or unions enter the playing field, right? So because if China and US, who has the greatest advancements in AI development, go towards Skynet scenario, other smaller nations, unions can tweak those weights and hopefully adjust for the Star Trek scenario.
Yeah, love it. So yeah, and the fine tuning of the model itself is possible. Absolutely. In the Star Trek scenario, that's my favorite. Okay, awesome.
Say, between this paper and what's going on with Russia and Lithuania being so close to Russia and its future in question, this has been probably most depressing week I had in years, Todd.
Okay. Well, let me try and I'm gonna wrap the thank you, Christine. I'm sorry it's been depressing. Let me wrap this up and then we'll end the recording. We'll go to some overtime. But I've got a few slides, some of which you guys have probably seen. Why is this not working? Share. Can you guys see this? There we go. Wrap. Okay, good. It's working. I think it's working. Oops. So acceleration effects, you've heard me talk about this. Things are changing exponentially faster. And I've got some proof on that. So we have the uncharted territories. Excuse me. AI scores on humanity's last exam. So we are approaching this artificial general intelligence. We're there now, basically, where we're in terms of these metrics of capabilities of these tests. We're actually running out of tests to test the AI because the AI is better than the tests that we can create. This is an article from Leopold Aschenbrenner, which is a must-read, this automated AI research in this superintelligence universe, which he's predicting somewhere between 2026 and 2030. I think we're actually moving closer and closer than what his prediction was. And this is also another graph from Leopold Aschenbrenner, where he's talking about, again, this cognitive labor, this superintelligence, I had something else I wanted to point on this. Yeah, but like this is all moving closer to today. Here's a post from Sam Altman from February of this year. My very approximate vibe is that it can do single-digit percentage of all economically valuable tasks in the world, which is a wild milestone. And he's referring to OpenAI's new deep research tool that they've released. Again, don't take this with a slight grain of salt because he's got something to sell you, so keep that in mind. Ethan Mollick recently posted this GPQA diamond score of AI over time. This is a very, very important analysis where he talks about how, like this horizontal, I think I have another slide that's better. Yeah, here we go. Human PhD using Google in their field. And the O3 model is above that. So imagine you're a PhD postdoc researcher and you're given a problem and you're said, okay, go solve this problem. Oh, and you can also use Google. The AI is doing better than that person who's a domain expert. So when I say that the smartest person you can hire is no longer a human, that's what that's referring to. Now, granted, in order to get there, they're spending somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million to get to this point, but that's not the issue. The issue is that the AI is capable. Here's a slide from the ARC Prize, which is, again, it's an AI prize. This is that O3 high-tuned 88%. Notice the x-axis is, so we're 500,000, 750,000, 1 million, somewhere in there. Test scores of AI systems on various capabilities relative to human performance. The 0 line is the human performance, and we're already above it from many of these things. Some of the stuff is not there, and also, mind you, this is a few years old at this point. I don't know why I have this here. I think this is accidental. This was Andrei Karpathy talking about vibe coding. So if you're a software developer, now it's a matter of just using the AI and just telling the AI to code it for you and just like let it go, and you just guide it along the way. And this is the new thing that everyone's talking about. So anyway, my vision for the future is to just party on. I do believe that this is humanity's Star Trek moment. I think we need some more optimism after the doom and gloom paper. I do believe that we need to look at this from a shift from scarcity to abundance. And we're in that shift, we need to consider a post-labor economy where people will no longer exchange their time, their knowledge, their labor for money. Meaning if the AI can do all of this stuff, and if we have artificial general intelligence, and if we have artificial superintelligence, what is the role of a human in society? It fundamentally changes. And it means that we get to look at this from the perspective of what's the meaning of life. And I think we're going to go through a process of having to look at ourselves in the mirror and understand this is an existential threat to your job, but not to you as a human. It means that we're going to be able to focus on living our lives and spending time with our friends and family and loving and creating art and expressing ourselves in ways that we could only ever have dreamt of. So that's my Star Trek future. People talk about that this shift, the roadmap to get there. We need universal basic income. If I can't have a job, how am I going to pay for my stuff? Yes, UBI, we're going to need to consider that. Likely during the Trump administration. Universal basic income is a stopgap. It's a Band-Aid. I think a better conversation is universal luxury. Okay, because all of a sudden, all of these dominoes, these burdens, these things that have held us back will start to fall away. And shift that from the paper, it's like better dead than red, to we can make an entire world better for all of us using AI. And that to me is the North Star. And we should share everything with everyone. So open source, open weights. I want to have a leadership role instead of a MAME or a MAD. Where's the perspective of the authors? Hey, here's the North Star. Let's collaborate internationally, globally, and as quickly as possible to build that universe of universal luxury, because I think we are very close to being able to do it. That's my my perspective on that. And the risk is that we really need some strong global leadership to get there. Again, the smartest person you can hire is not a human, so keep this in mind. And the good news is that humanity is not running out of problems to solve anytime soon. So think about the art of the possible. Think about what you can possibly do. Use AI. Go find that problem. Go solve that problem. And I think that that's very important. And again, in the age of AI, the only future where we thrive is through our human relationships. So please do connect with me. I'm here every Wednesday. The 10 p.m. show is completely different from the 8 p.m. show. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Next week, we will explore transformation effects. And on that note, I will stop sharing. Thank you. I'm going to end the recording and let's do some overtime.